Project for today is going to be this Arctic Cat Prowler. It's having, I think it's belt problems, I'm hoping, otherwise it's clutch problems, but we'll get it unloaded off the trailer and I'll kind of show you what it's doing when we're trying to drive it. So we'll fire it up. It runs fine. Let's try putting it in four-wheel drive and see what that does. That still doesn't want to go. We'll get it in the shop and we'll figure it out. I'm going to start with pulling the seat off of here. These are not the easiest thing to get to the belt. So I think it's been a while since I've done one of these, so I'm not sure how much I want to pull off, but I think I'm going to pull this bucket out of here. I don't know if I can slip it past this, otherwise I'll just pull this whole assembly out of here. But I think I could slip it out. It's just some torques, and then we can kind of see what we're dealing with in there. So I'm gonna pull these torques out of here. They're a T30 torques. See if we can pull this out of here. Oh, I missed a couple. There we go. Well, we're getting to where we can see something down in there. There's the clutch cover right here. So I think I'm going to see if I can get the rest of this cover off and we can get in there better to pull that cover off of there. So I'm going to pull the driver's seat. And this should pull off. Finagling. That'll give us a lot more room to see what we're doing. I'll just set the seat in here for now. Now we can get to that clutch cover. It's right here. That looks like those are torques also. Got some wires here. I'm hoping I can slip that out of there. This gas tank is kind of in the way. So hopefully we can sneak that out. So it's looking like we need to remove this whole floor pan so we can get the gas tank unbolted and move that. They don't make it very easy to get to the belts on these things, but I am a little bit worried that we're gonna have to go deeper into, there's a wet clutch in there that goes bad sometimes, so I'm just hoping that it is just the belt once we get this far in. All these bolts are mostly T30 torques on the floor pan. Have to get a pick and blow those out with air. I don't want to strip them out with the dirt and stuff in there. They're pretty rusted. They might end up breaking off anyway. Now we'll see if these will come loose now. This one's kind of broke around it, so I might not even have to. Oh, that one's fun. I took a pick and dug in there and then blew them out with air. Oh, there, I broke my socket. I had a feeling that might happen. Well, that was a gear wrench torque socket, so we'll see. This is the Harbor Freight one. Oh man, those are tight. We got one. Well, two of them out of the four. Budge at all. There's not really a way to get into them to put any lube in them either. Maybe underneath there, and I can't heat them really because we've got the plastic will end up melting. So I might just try to lift the floor up enough on the other side and just kind of bend it so I can get this center console out of here. So I might just leave that. So this side should lift up. I have to get a pry bar and pry out on that. Just pull it backwards, but there's a strap under the front of the tank is the reason I need to do this. Otherwise, this could stay. This is one of the reasons why Arctic Cat went out of business. Is because of stuff like this. You need to build stuff that's serviceable, especially something like a belt. It needs to be able to be done on the trail. You can't be having to do all this stuff just to change a belt. Ways. There we go. Well, now I can see that strap anyway, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the gas tank far enough out of the way by only lifting that up that much. I don't know how well you can see down in here, but this is the top strap. This is one of the things that the customer had to bring this to a dealership. The cost of this would be astronomical just for the sheer amount of stuff you have to take apart. Not that it's all that difficult. So under this floorboard, that strap there in the front, if you can see it, I'm not gonna be able to get the camera in there while I'm doing it, but I'm gonna pull that strap off and then we'll be able to jimmy that tank around a little bit to give us some more room. And of course those bolts had nuts underneath them, so it made it even harder to get to. They didn't thread into the metal, so just another thing where they cut corners and didn't make it easy to service. So I ended up having to drill the rivets out of this panel that goes on here. Now we'll see if we can jimmy the gas tank far enough forward. I put a block of wood under there to hold that floor up as high as I can. We'll see if we can get that pushed forward. We're not going to get it all the way out of there, but we should be able to get it far enough to get it out of the way. I think that'll give us enough room. Might have to put a bungee around it or something there to hold it up, but that should give us enough room to get that cover off of there. I can't really get a camera down in here very good, but hopefully you can see a little bit there. All I'm doing is taking all the little screws off that hold the cover for the belt cover or the clutch cover. Well, I think I got all the bolts out of there. But it's being a little bit stubborn. I'm coming off of there. I might have to get a pry bar in between. There's kind of some pry points on there. You can kind of just put the bar in and twist. Oh, it's moving. There we go. It looks like we had a heck of an oil leak, and the belt is all soaked in oil, so I'm guessing that is probably our problem. We got a failed oil seal. The belt looks kind of crooked on there too. We'll see. Got the tank far enough. So I don't know how good that shows up on camera, but it's a bunch of oil back in there. So we're gonna have to pull the clutches off, and then I'll see which seal is leaking, if it's behind the primary or the secondary clutch. I've not really seen this problem before. Usually it's either the belt or one of these clutches or the internal wet clutch that is causing the issue, but a belt soaked in oil like that will cause those problems, because it was pulling itself. If I put it in low range, it wasn't too bad, but it was slipping pretty good in high range, so I'm guessing this is our issue. So just for reference, that cover has 15 bolts holding it on, because I know that can be helpful to know with something like that where you can't see them all. You might be fighting it and you still have one left, so as long as you got 15 of them out of there, you've got all the screws that hold the cover on. So that nut on the clutch down there is a 32mm socket, and then I haven't figured out the size for the one on the secondary clutch yet, but we're going to pull this one off first. I'm just going to try the smaller impact on it, but I'm not sure if that's going to do it or not. If I can fit it in here. There we go. That wasn't too bad. If I can get the thing out of here. kind of working through that hole here. I took the plastic off for the filler neck. So it's important to keep all this stuff kind of in order. So it was a nut and then a washer. And then this outer sheave comes off, which this looks like it's got some junk in it also. You can see there's some plastic or something melted in there. It almost looks like a mouse might have brought a little bit of a plastic bag or something in there. While this is apart, we'll disassemble all this stuff, and you can see the oil on it. So, but we'll disassemble and clean everything and get that oil seal fixed, and then hopefully this one will be good. I'm gonna pull the rest of that. I think I can get the belt out of there if I pull that spacer out, and then we can get the rest of that primary clutch off of there. So then there's a spacer on that shaft. Pull that out of there. I thought maybe we could get the belt off then, but I think we'll just take the secondary off. It'll be easier to pull that out of there. I'll have to find a socket that'll fit that one. So I've got an 1 7/16 socket on there. I didn't have a metric one that big, but that seems to fit pretty tight. And I've got the big impact in there. We'll see if this will come loose. There we go. It's kind of a interesting nut setup on there. So we'll hopefully that will just slide off of the shaft now. Yeah, I'll have to slide it with the belt. Sorry, my arms are getting in the way. This is such tight working quarters here. I'll slide the belt out of here. Those clutches were lubed up good, that's for sure. So it looks like the seal under the secondary clutch was fine. So it's got to be this one that's leaking. I'm trying to get this sheave off of there. I might have to get a pick or something to get behind it. I've just got a little pick here I'm going to put behind. That way we can get a straight pull on it. And it has to match up with the splines again on the second part. Get that off of there. It doesn't really look like we're leaking anywhere, though. I don't know how all that oil got in there. I'll have to check the engine oil and see. So while we've got it all apart, I was going to change the engine oil in it. So I drained that out. I'm kind of investigating that oil leak because I was doing some research on these things, and I'll show you when I get the pan out from under it, but I'm letting it drain really well under here. It's got a bunch of gas in the oil, so I'm thinking that was our problem. It was overfilled with oil, plus it thinned it out so much it was able to creep past those seals, because I haven't seen it leaking anymore with it apart, and I cleaned it up now. And I'm going to pop this oil filter off of it and throw a new one on. I've just got a absorbent mat under it since it's not really the easiest to get in here. You can see the discoloration. It's kind of brown instead of being black like used oil normally would be. I've got our new filter here. I'm just using a high flow HF621. And I always put some oil around that O-ring on the top. They come off easier when you do that. So I'm gonna let it drain for a while, and then I'll fill it back up, and I might try running it with the cover off and everything and see if I see any leaks. But I'm thinking that it wasn't really a mechanical error. It was more just having that too thin of oil in it that was made it leak into the transmission or the clutches there. So I was gonna start cleaning up this clutch, and I realized that these rollers are all melted. That should be a round roller. It's melted right down to the metal core, and there's a bunch of that stuff down in here that's melted in the pieces. So pretty much every one, this one was broke completely. So we're gonna need a new set of rollers for this. I think that's gonna be our biggest issue on why it wouldn't drive, because these were completely stuck. I had to pry them out of there, and these should roll back and forth in these grooves here. They go up and down, and that's what moves the clutch in and out. They're the clutch weights. So we'll get a new set of those in there. I'll get all this stuff cleaned up, and then I'll bring you back. So I've got this pretty clean. I have to scrape the residue of the old gasket off of there yet. I did buy a new gasket for the clutch cover, but I was spinning all this stuff and checking the seals and everything, and it doesn't really look like anything is actually leaking. So I think I'm just gonna put it back together, and then we'll see if an issue comes up later. He doesn't really want to pay to have me tear it all apart and put seals in if it doesn't need it for sure. So we'll probably catch it earlier this time now that he knows to watch out for it. There is a drain plug in the bottom of the cover he can take out and see if there's any oil residue in there. So that'll be something we can keep an eye on. But other than that, I'm just gonna continue cleaning all this stuff up, and then we'll start putting it back together. So I've been scraping this gasket off of this clutch cover here, and I just thought I'd show a little quick tip on if your gasket scraper blade gets dull. When you're scraping, you're really only scraping on one side of the blade, so most of the time you get one side dull, and you can just pull the blade out and flip it around, and then the bottom side is still going to be sharp. I've already done it on this one, so I'm going to leave it back this way, but this scraper, the way it's shaped, it's kind of hard to scrape with it upside down, so I always scrape with it this way. So I just take the blade and flip it around, and it's like you got a new blade at that point until you get both sides dull. So I've got all new rollers for this. This is what they should look like, and this is what we've got. I'm kind of thinking that these are aftermarket rollers that were in here, because of the way they melted and stuff, they seem like a different type of plastic. I did order a set of aftermarket rollers, and they got lost in the mail, or the person never sent them. I'm not really sure what happened with them, but they had a shipping label printed, and they just never got farther than that, is what it looked like. But so these are actually from Articat. I went to a dealer and got them. They were about 10 bucks a piece, and then they are part number 0823-170, and you need 8 of them. So it's not the cheapest thing, but they just lay down in here once we got everything cleaned up. And you can see they're supposed to roll up and down like that, and the other ones were not doing that. These look like they're a few different. There's 2 of them that are a little bit, 3 of them that are a little different color green, so I don't know if just a different batch of them or what. They seem like they're the same anyway. You kind of got to watch that when you buy stuff nowadays. It seems like a lot of it is manufacturing errors. And then we've got these little tabs that slide up and down here, and these have a little bit of slop, but they weren't enough really to worry about. And you can only put them in one direction on here. They kind of just sit in these grooves like that. And then they go down like that. I want to make sure that it slides. Seems like it's a little bit catchy. I think it's catching over here. There might be something. I'll clean that up a little bit, and then, yeah, there's a little, just the tiniest little burr on there. That's why you gotta assemble this stuff and kind of check it over, because this is where it slides. And I must not have got, there's that melted plastic stuff from these. I must not have got a little piece of that. I'll scrape that off and then we'll try it again. I spent some time cleaning this up a little bit better, and it seems like it slides pretty good now. It's kind of hard to tell with it on the bench because you're not perfectly square. It needs to run straight up and down. So once you get it in the spline, it'll run a little bit more true, so it'll be better. But I think we're ready to start throwing this back together, and then we'll test it out when it's on there. I'll move it back and forth and make sure it's working good. I'll put it together without the belt first, just the primary on there, and then we'll put the belt on after that when we know everything is sliding smoothly. So I can't get the camera in here too well, but hopefully you can see the general idea of it. This has to get past the first splines, and then there's another set that goes on like that. And then we've got our spacer. It goes like that. And then I'll grab the outer sheave. I think I gotta slide the gas tank forward just a little bit to get that in there. There we go. So that goes like that. This outer piece is the only part that actually fits on the spline. And I just want to run this I went too far. I knocked one of our rollers out. But it did seem like it was sliding okay. I'll get this pulled out, and then we'll put the belt with the secondary clutch on all at the same time. I pulled it back out of there, and then I'll put it together with the belt, but I wanted to just show you one more thing to check. There's a bushing inside here. On both sides there's a little wear point here, and on the outside you want to just check that. When it's on the shaft, you kind of want to, you can just push that bushing through and kind of feel if there's slop in there. So you don't want it to be running side to side. It'll end up getting caught and your clutch won't work correctly. So I'm going to throw this secondary clutch back on. Get it on about that far, then I'm going to put the belt on. The belt does have directional arrows on it, so you want to make sure those face the right direction. I'm going to actually put it in gear. It'll make it a little bit easier to line the splines up. take this bushing off for now too, just to give us a little bit extra pull. This belt is a little bit tight. There's not enough room for me to get both my arms in here. There are a couple of bolt holes in that secondary. We can put bolts in to spread it out, I think. We'll try that. There, it popped on there. Not quite all the way, but there, it snapped on. So what I did, you see that bolt right there in the clutch, right there. I put that in, and that spreads the clutch open, so the belt is sitting down lower in there now. So once I get the primary on there and stuff, I'll take that bolt out of there. It was the same metric threads as the cover bolts, but you needed a long threaded one. That's actually a longer stud for a battery, so that ended up working in there. Otherwise, the toolkit should have something in there, but this is all I've got for the toolkit. And usually they have a bolt in there, or like it's kind of like an L-shaped wrench that you can put in there. The Skidoo snowmobiles have kind of the same thing, but this one was missing. We don't have too much in our toolkit for this one. So I'll get the primary pushed in there, and maybe we'll get the nut on the secondary before I go too far, and then we'll be on our way of getting this one back together. I'm just gonna put this nut on here by hand for now. I do have the transmission and gear that made it easier to turn that, to pop it on the spline. And then I'll grab the primary and slide that on. It'd have been easier if I could have got this gas tank all the way out of here, but there we go. Get that started on there. Then there was a washer, and then our nut. Not really sure. I think that washer should go up over the spline, so I gotta get it farther in there. I'm going to put it back in neutral. If I can. There we go. Kind of just doing that so the belt will seat in there better. So I don't want to just jam this washer down without it being up and over it. It won't get centered. I'm not really sure why it's not going on there. So I'm having trouble getting this on far enough, so I threaded this bolt to about right here, so it's long enough to press that secondary clutch open farther. The one I had was just too short. This shouldn't push too hard, so it shouldn't wreck the end of the bolt. Otherwise, you could grind it down to a kind of a point at the end. I think that should be loose enough now that I can get this pushed up farther. Yeah, now we're getting where it's pushing. I want that washer to sit on those splines. Otherwise, if the washer gets caught on those splines, it's just gonna there we go. If the washer sits on those splines, it's gonna just tighten on that, and it's not going to tighten down the way it's supposed to. So what I'm doing now is just spinning it, and I can tighten it a little bit more by hand as that belt rides up the clutch. That internal wet clutch has a one-way bearing in it. That's why I'm able to spin this backwards without turning the engine over, but you can't go forward. So I think that's okay. I've got it tightened down by hand now, so I think I can take I'll take the impact and I'll hit it just a little bit to snug it up, and then we'll see how everything is riding after that. So I did snug that up. Now I'm going to take this bolt out of here. And then as we spin it, we should be able to watch that belt ride back up where it's supposed to. Try to get you so you can see. So we're watching the belt here. You can see how it's down into the secondary there. So it does sit down in there a little ways, but I'm going to start it up and run it, and we'll see if it comes up. I think the other one was down in there a little bit like that when we took it apart, so that should be fairly normal. I have to tighten this one down still and then figure out what we need to torque those at. So we're going to fire it up and let it run with the belt cover off, and we'll just see how that belt rides and everything and how the clutch is working. So I'll fire it up here. So I shut it off. I don't like that rattling noise, but I think it's because we don't have the support on the end of the clutch there for that internal clutch, so we'll have to put the cover back on. But everything seemed like it worked okay. It was pulling through and the clutch was closing like it should. So I think we should be okay. I'm just hoping that internal clutch is not bad, is another one of our problems. We might have had a multitude of different things wrong, so we'll see when I get it put back together if it'll move or not. I'm going to at least just put the cover back on and clean some stuff up, and then we'll put it in gear and make sure that it will actually pull itself. So I didn't record it, just because it was so hard to get that cover in there and stuff, and weaseling everything around. I would just knock the camera over and stuff all the time, and you guys won't be able to see what I'm doing anyway. So I got the cover in there. It was kind of a pain to keep this gasket in place. I don't really like gluing them with silicone or anything, but I think I should have at least just tacked it a little bit on the cover with silicone and then put the cover in, because it was just drooping all over the place. It's such a big gasket that I had a heck of a time getting it all in place, but I got it in there, and the clutches are torqued down and everything. And then I did run it just forward and back just a little ways, and it seems like it's okay now, and it did quiet down once. There's a bearing in the end of this cover that holds that whole shaft up, so once I got the cover back on there, then it was fine. So now I need to put these straps back on the gas tank, and then put the floor back in it, and all that stuff we tore out of here back, and then we should be able to be good to go to try to test this thing out and see if it actually works. I was going to rivet this cover back on, but the holes in the plastic here don't correspond with the holes in the metal, so I tried to rivet it and they just pull through. So I don't know what they had going on there, if it was not supposed to be like that. So I'm going to drill these holes just a little bit bigger, and then we're just going to bolt it on with the top two bolts, since I can't get down to those bottom ones. But that should hold it just fine. It's just a trim piece, basically. So just using these little, they're 10mm head bolts. I think I'll put a washer on them so they don't crush the plastic so much. I'll put this cap on. Now if I can get down in there, got one of them. That should work. Alright, I got it all put back together, and we got it running outside. I'll put it in high range. This was before when I wouldn't take off. You could see it revving way up. Now we're at 2,000 RPMs and it engaged. changing, so that's good. It's a good hard pull. I think this one is fixed anyway. Well, everything seemed to work good on it. It was really snappy. With these bald tires on it, you don't get a heck of a lot of traction. It mainly just spins when you go to take off, but it's really snappy compared to what it was before. It would rev up to 5,000–6,000 RPMs before it would actually kick in and start pulling. This has a, you can change this by pushing this button. You can change this from a speedometer to a tach, which is kind of a neat feature. But I think we're gonna keep an eye on the oil level and make sure it's not building any more gas in there. He did say that he had a couple of hard starts in the winter time, and I wonder, a lot of times when customers say it's 1 or 2 times, it could be multiple times, but he had replaced the front spark plug, but he couldn't get to the back one. So while we had it apart, I did replace that back spark plug. So hopefully that'll make it start better in the winter. But if you flood it a lot, it'll put a bunch of gas into the oil if it's getting past the rings when it's flooding. So I'm thinking that that was probably his issue, was just, and then he lets it sit and idle a lot. It's an older guy that just uses it to putt around his property. So I'm thinking that it was just from all that. But from what I did a research on, even when these were brand new, a lot of guys were saying they were getting gas in their oil. So I don't know if they had an injector problem or what, but nobody really had a fix for it. So we'll just keep an eye on it. And then also keep an eye on those clutches to make sure that stays dry. I'll show them where that oil drain plug is, or the drain plug. If it's for basically if you get water in the clutches, there's a drain plug, you can drain it out, but he can open that and see if there's any oil on the plug or anything, which it should be dry. So now with the oil change and everything, I think it'll be okay, at least for a while. But that's going to do it for this one. If you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.